Let's welcome Hector Calderon, Monterey Bay Area community organizer, Californians for Pesticide Reform, Berkeley, California. He's joined by Farmworker community representatives.
I want to thank you all for being here in this call. My name is Hector Calderon. I will be moderating and recording. And well, good afternoon, everyone. And welcome into this space today. I am so excited to have incredible people in this panel today, representing their communities and their involvement. And most importantly, they're representing themselves as farmers, organizers, activists, and in several ways, in areas in which they have been working intentionally with their communities. As I said, my name is Hector Calderon, and I will be facilitating this panel with questions to our panelists. But before we dive in on their responses, I would like to take some time to share with you who I am and more about our organizations. I am the local organizer of Californians for Pesticide Reform in Monterey and Santa Cruz counties, and I coordinate 3 local branches of the coalition Safe Schools and Safe Farming located in Watsonville, Greenfield, and Salinas. I would like to share just a little bit about our group, Safe Schools and Safe Farming, also known as SAS. This is a coalition of the organizations, and most importantly, it is formed by residents, farmers, teachers, and also with from union members located in Watsonville, Greenfield, and Salinas. And all of them are working against pesticides exposure in the Central Coast and across California. SAS works towards transforming our current farming systems, in avoiding the use of pesticides, and in the best interest and benefit of our communities and the environment. Also, SAS is dedicated to giving priority to leadership development of community members who live and are at the forefront and most exposed to pesticides. Also, given the intersection of several aspects of life and movements that include air quality and water, and also kids' health and well-being, all the way to food justice and well-being and justice of our communities, right? And so I would like to also share at the same time a bit about our farming region and also our farmers, our county where we're currently living at, in order to give our audience some context on where we live and the realities where they live and how they got where our panelists are right now. So Salinas Valley is a bounty farming region of hundreds of counties. 9,000. And located all in Monterey County between Gavilan and Santa Lucia mountain ranges. In the world, people have known this region as the salad bowl of the world. While the farming industry makes millions of dollars on production of strawberries, lettuce, tomatoes, and spinach, in the Salinas Valley, farmers are producing all of these while they're considered to live among the most underserved populations in California. The fight for economic, social, and political justice has been constant through generations, right? The writer John Steinbeck did not only bring international attention on the injustices of this region, but also highlighted how the Salinas Valley was the setting of the historical and only incarceration of United Farms Workers Union Cesar Chavez, a movement in the 80s and 60s, and it has also supported the use reduction of highly dangerous pesticides by our farming workers in Monterey County. According to Chavez, the United Farm Workers Union, he said the farmers are society's prisoners. Farmers and their children show intoxication effects produced by pesticides more than anyone else. That said, I would like to introduce you all to the new leaders of this movement who have been fighting for our communities and the rights of these farmers who reside in Monterey County. Each one of our panelists today here in this conversation comes from a place of power and from organizing their communities against structural racism and environmental injustices that are present still in our lives. We have a few minutes. Let's take a moment for each one of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves and share a bit about who they are. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Juan Moran. It's nice to be here, Hector, and for me to be invited into the space. As you said, my name is Juan Manuel Moran, and I have been here in this area for almost 45 years in the Salinas Valley. And I have witnessed the fight against pesticide use. Well, thank you, Juan. And so let's keep on going with Rufina. We can't hear you, Rufina. You're muted. My name is Rufina Resendiz. I have been here in the central area, in the Central Coast for 33 years. And in those 33 years, I have witnessed lots of things. The effects of pesticide and pesticide residues in our food. I have seen sick people in different illnesses caused by pesticides. These pesticides affect our health because they enter our bodies through our mouths, our eyes, our ears, and also our pores, our skin. And this is all for now, Hector. Thank you, Rufina. Mariela? Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Mariela Jacuente. I'm a student at Monterey University. As of now, I have been an intern with SAS and with Hector, and I have lived in the area for just about 3 or 4 years. To be honest, I didn't know anything about this matter, and I have been learning about it in my internship, and this is why I'm here today. It is important to me to be here talking about it because I'm also a teacher at daycare, and I'm concerned about all children's well-being. Thank you. Now go ahead with Lily Lisette. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liliana Elizabeth de la Fuente, and I'm a resident of this area, Greenfield. I have lived here for 17 years. My husband works in the fields, and I like that. I am involved with different organizations, so this is a priority to us, and we're working on it, and I like that. I'm learning alongside with this organization, SAS, and I'm thankful for the information provided and all the teachings we have access through them. So thank you. Let's move on to Maria Isabel. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Maria Isabel Ramirez, and my story in this country started around the year 1996 when I first arrived here. I arrived directly to Watsonville. To be exact, I arrived to at the farming fields. My husband was already working there. We used to live in the middle of these fields where he worked, and 12 years later, we moved to the Tundra area where we lived for 10 years. Since then, in the year 2017, we moved here to Greenfield, where I first heard about SAS and their work and their mission, and I fell in love with it. Ever since, I've been fighting along their side for a better future and well-being of the world and our children. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Now let's move on to Carlos. Good afternoon, Carlos Vega here. I come from, well, my story is a bit satisfactory, because I came from a management position in Mexico, and I came to work in these farming fields. And well, as a child, I used to do this kind of work with my dad, and I had to. And everything I have lived, everything I know, and what I'm going through and have gone through for the last 31 years living here in Greenfield, well, I have dedicated myself to this and to learning more about the root causes that are affecting us as farm workers. And more than anything, also what we're transmitting to our children. Thank you. Thank you, Carlos. And I know that Marta Cepeda is in this call, but I'm not sure if she's under Ana Maria's name. Okay, so we'll keep on going. I know that some of you have already shared a little about your story and how you arrived at the Central Coast and to these jobs that you're performing. I know that also know that several of you are organizers and activists in your communities, and you're also community leaders. At the same time, so we would like to hear a little bit about you and how you arrived to the Monterrey area, especially to the south area of the county. And if you could give us a little bit of context, so for us to understand and for our listening audience to learn about you. Let's start with you, Juan. Listen, well, I arrived here to the United States when I was 18 years old, and I started working right away in the fields. That was in 1974, 1975, when I met Cesar Chavez. Then in 1979, we got organized and we introduced the union. And it was then and when I started to learn about unions and how they were helpful. So I was very involved for several years in all of these efforts. And honestly, it was then when I wanted to learn about the complaints against chemical industries, especially around 87, 88, 89, when we were boycotting grape producers because of all the pesticides they were using. We had videos of Early Mart and McFarland in the other valley, the Valley of San Joaquin, where children were born without limbs and physical deformities. So I was very involved. And Now in this group, everyone knew who I was, and they reach out to me, and I have been involved, well, almost since the very early days of the group here in Salinas. I participate as much as I can whenever possible because of my work, and I'm always on the go. But I'm present every time I can, and I'm not sure if you can see this or not. This is a picture from when we were boycotting. This was in San Jose, where we were fighting against the use of pesticides. So yes, I have been involved in this fight against for several years now in opposition, and it's really sad to know that after all these years of constant fighting, the situation is very much the same. Thank you. Thank you, Juan. So now we can go on with Rufina. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about your story and maybe how you ended up in the Central Coast and to this kind of job and all the things you're doing now with the community. Well, yes, listen, I got here to the Central Coast from Mexico. I came here to the United States seeking a better future. And what did I find here? I found lots of fields, very beautiful fields. I ignored that the farming industry here was a vast supply for both internal and external markets. I was very excited and work on the fields because, sometimes I was not as excited because it was very exhausting. But what helped me, and I liked it more, was the fact that I was working with my people from Guanajuato, and that made me happy. They told me how to work the fields. They told me how to work first on parsley, which I didn't like much. And then because they were working harvesting tomatoes, I followed them and they taught me how to harvest. And so then I switched and started working on a company that produced grapes, and I worked there. I'm a hardworking person due to necessity, so I always did my best. And then the Farmers Union came and started organizing us. I really did not much, and I did not even know what was all this about, but I got involved more and more and more. And then the people from the union, they informed us about pesticides, and I learned more about it, Hector. And then, I got more interested because I enjoy learning, not only working and going home, showering, getting dressed, and getting ready to do it all over again. I'll take all learning opportunities that present to me and when I'm invited, and I always do everything I can do to be there. Years later, I also got involved with Líderes Campesinas. They gave us more trainings and learned then how terrible pesticides are to our health. So, thank you. Thank you, Rufina. Now we're going to listen to Mariela and have her tell us as well how the same question that everyone else is answering. I think that the way I got here to this country, I can say that my parents brought me here. It was not really my choice. It was a choice they made for me. Also, as I said, I got involved on this because of school. But also I got involved with this organization and all because, as I mentioned, I am a daycare teacher. Last year, due to the pandemic, I lost my job. And because of that, when I was invited to work in the fields last summer, and because I was on a school break at the university, it was easy for me to accept it. So I went with a friend of mine, actually my friend's mom. So I went, and it was then when I did several things that I have seen in Salinas area. And I used to think, wow, what a beautiful place. Everything is so green. But the reality is that the image is not what it seems. It's very different. On the fields, I witnessed the injustices workers go through, in addition to what they live in the workplace. So all of that is what has brought me here. Yes. Thank you. And now we can move on to Liliana. Yes, well, Hector, as others have shared, I got here 16 years ago, 17 years ago, sorry. So we decided, I got married in Mexico. I got my degree in early childhood education. And when I started living with him, we got together and we got married. We decided to move here. We arrived to the valley thanks to my husband's uncle. He was already living here and he was a farm supervisor. So he was able to get my husband situated. And actually, our grandparents and uncles work at this very same company. So that was it. It was here where I had my children. I got involved with organizations. For a while, I was with Mujeres en Acción, and I'm still involved with them. I'm also involved with another one called Líderes Campesinas that was mentioned before by Rufina. And I have been part of Líderes Campesinas actually for 2 years now. And as I said, our priority is pesticide use. And as I saw my husband working and all the things that were going on and we have been through, in the farming industry using pesticides. I live on a farm that used to let us know when they were applying pesticides, but didn't always do that. So we needed to be very cautious. I have 4 kids. The oldest one, well, I got here when I was a month away from my due date, and he's fine. But the other 3, the youngest ones, were born here. And they do. They do have learning challenges, learning disabilities, and speech issues, and that is all related to our pesticide exposure. This is what motivates me to take action and to inform people and have them learn why pesticides are harmful to our children and harmful to our environment. Very harmful. Another important matter is that now I'm also supporting Greenfield parents of children with special needs. This is a group that is in its forming stages and is called Organización Mariposas. And my motto is to help others in my community. And thank you. Thank you, Liliana. Let's keep on going and move quickly to Carlos, and then last but not least to Maria Isabel. Same question I have asked others to answer. What is your story and how you arrived to the Central Coast and to the job that you have done as of now? What are you doing for work and community leadership? So go ahead and tell us. Well, I would like to share that I have learned by questioning. And I used to manage a very important company in Mexico, but what I was making was not enough. I had 5 kids, and so after speaking with my wife, and she had some relatives here in Greenfield, so I decided to come to this country seeking a better future for our children. A better one, and than the one that we could have had in Mexico, even when I was in a management position. And well, coming here, I have to start from scratch, working in the jalapeno pepper fields, California pepper fields, bell pepper fields, tomato fields, spring onion fields, well, anything related to farming, really. Then I started to get involved with my children's education at the PTA at school, and I learned about the migrant program and the bilingual program too. At the bilingual program, I was part of the council of an organization named CABE at the state level, and I was also the vice president of the migrant program also at the state level. But because I'm very curious and because I was working in the fields, I wanted to know how people working there were affected and started to get involved. Actually, I was also an organizer of the United Farm Workers Union for a while. And that was when I met Juan Manuel, I met Armando, I met Arturo, and also Paul Chavez. Well, I met most of the leaders of the Union of Campesinos, and also I got involved with parent school committees where they were working with everything related to education issues. And because there were so many kids in the area with learning issues, and hyperactivity, ADHD, and Down syndrome. And I started collaborating with chamacos and SAS and other organizations at a local and regional and state level to learn a bit more about what was affecting these children and make my contribution. It is because I'm a proud father of 7 kids, and all of them were, well, four of them, 2 of them in Fresno and 1 at UC Davis. All of this has led me to understand and learn the root causes of these issues. Right now, you probably see me blinking constantly, and that is because I have also been impacted by the chemicals I sprayed on the fields. All of this has affected us in one way or another, and all of what we're doing and keeps on going and challenging us. We have been working for a while with SAS, and I think we're in the right path. We started with Mar and others, and with many community volunteers. And I, as a leader, continue learning and meeting people, and I want to keep on learning and helping my community. Thank you, Carlos. And now we move into Maria Isabel with the same question. I know that you already shared a little, but could you please provide us with a little bit more information that you have not shared with us yet? Okay, yes, well, as I shared, when I arrived to this country, my husband was already working on the strawberry fields of Watsonville. And well, I have 3 kids. 3 of my kids there. We lived, he was the one who applied pesticides in the fields. And even when I was not working directly, he brought, I think, this issue home, this problem home, because we used to inhale it because we live in the middle of the fields. We inhaled it, and it was, I think this is the reason why 2 of my children have issues. One of them has learning disabilities, and the other one was diagnosed with autism. So I didn't really know then that this issue was so serious. I adore living there. I was happy there. But then I moved and I got here to Greenfield, where I attended a community health class, and all of the information provided by SAS. I spoke with Sarai, and she told me in a general way about the class suit and, well, the prevalence of these sort of learning issues, like autism and others in relation to pesticides. So I was interested in learning more about it, and I started connecting the dots. While we were in Watsonville, my son also had asthma, and when we moved to Thunder, we live at a higher altitude in the mountains, and this issue stopped, actually. He stopped having respiratory issues. So then again, we have to move back to Greenfield, and his issues started again. Once we moved, there we have to move across the grape fields where they also use pesticides. So I started associating it all, and this is the reason why I'm part of this organization and why I have joined this fight. I have joined this fight because many of us are not aware of this issue and the severity of the problem and its consequences. Even families who are not directly impacted by it and who might not have health issues are affected by it. And therefore, I'm part of this organization. I also belong to other organizations, but this is the one because of their work and their mission that really resonates with me because of my personal experiences. And and thank you. Thank you all for providing us with a context for your live experiences. We know that in Monterey County, more than about 7.7 billions of pounds of pesticides were used in farming in 2017. Okay, so according to recent data published by California Department of Pesticide Regulation, right? And out of those large quantities, we estimate that about 3.3 million of pounds are sprayable, right? So those pesticides can spread openly, as some might say at free will, and can be dispersed by currents of air for several miles after each application. And well, knowing this fact, and after all of the testimonies we have heard so far, and knowing how others have been impacted by these pesticides, what are your experiences in regard to exposure? Some of you have already touched on this a little, but we would like to know if you could share with us how exposure to pesticides has affected the communities that trust you as leaders, not only in your personal experience, but those of theirs, and specifically speaking about this area here in the south side of Monterey County. And I know that some of you are in other parts of the county, but even with that, please share a bit more about your story and what you have heard and how you have been able to provide, how to say it, maybe information on pesticides used in farming, right? So, and we can start with, let's start with Juan. Go ahead. You're muted. Thank you. I worked for 23 years in a grape farm. Grapes used for wine production located in the area of Soledad and Gonzales. And after is when I started hearing about the harm caused by pesticides. This was years before the union. Then two of my coworkers died of leukemia, and back then there were not a lot of regulations. I work as a sprayer, but then my supervisor got me involved and asked me to deal with tractors and chemicals applications. And then when I saw people falling ill and dying of leukemia, I thought that that was maybe the reason, because they were highly exposed to pesticides. It was not until the union came in place when more care and control was reinforced, and they had then to provide us with all of the equipment we needed, like gloves, masks, and all of that. From then on, when things changed a little bit, when people stopped getting very sick, even then my coworkers, well, even I was not that exposed, but they were very exposed. They were because they were working all year long, inhaling all of that dust. And well, women used to cover their faces with cloth, and that helped them some. But most of men are overexposed, and this is the reason why we came to having agreements with the company for them to supply us with proper safety equipment. A lot of the illnesses caused by pesticides exposure were reduced, but yes, I am saying for many years, as I said, since 1980, I have been always tried to, well, contribute more on this matter of pesticides more than anything else, and that's why. Thank you. So now we move on to Rufina. Once again, the question is, how could we share what is happening here in South Monterey County in regard to pesticide exposure in our communities? Oh, well, listen, Hector, I worked in the gray fields for 7 years in a row. Even when I was pregnant with my youngest son, I had to work during my pregnancy for 4 months. So when my son went to school in his first years of school, he wasn't learning like the other kids. He just wasn't learning, and I was worried and felt sad. So I requested for him to be tested, and well, the district listened to me and tested him, and he was diagnosed with learning disabilities. So I link it all to my exposure to those chemicals because by then I was more aware about this sort of harm, the harm caused by pesticides, but commonly used to fight pests, fungus, worms, and everything that could hinder grapevines and crops. I reached this conclusion out of the fact that I didn't work while I was pregnant with my other kids, and none of them had this sort of issue, and that is why. And I think this is the reason why it makes me feel sad, and I'm gonna stay strong here for you, but I get sad because I see my son and he doesn't have any dreams. And well, I try to keep him motivated and I even encourage him to see a psychologist. I'm seeing one right now for a different reason. I'm raising two young girls and I needed it. And so I told the therapist and he said, well, I asked him, what could I do for my son to go back to school? He didn't graduate from high school. He doesn't have his GED. And he said, well, you said that you're going back to school. Could you invite him? And I said, yes. And I did that actually just last week because one of my daughters encouraged me to go back to school and I'm considering it. So I said to my son, what if we, the two of us, could go back to school and take a class or two? And he said, get back to school? And so who will pay my bills? He makes up excuses because he doesn't like school, so there's that. I also had a coworker. She worked in the gray fields for a long time, many years. She had a son with deformities and he had many health issues and conditions. And his brain, well, he didn't, he has special needs, he has disabilities. But the worst part of it all that makes me really sad is that she had cancer and I'm not sure why, but she couldn't get medical care here. So someone told her that in Mexico she could heal, and so she left. And we used to be coworkers, and she passed away due to this cancer, Hector. And well, she was my coworker, and just like hers, there's so many stories, stories people do not know. Another experience I had is that while I was working on the fields, as Juan Manuel said, we used to cover our faces from pesticides, and that helped sometimes. But when it was so hot and the temperature was too hot, and sometimes we were not even paid, we would work regardless. Among all of the sulfur applied to those grapes, I used to get lots of facial pimples. Also, I was under a lot of stress and that affected me greatly. And sometimes my doctor will send me home for a week or two to be away from work. From stress comes anger, and from anger, other things come up. And it has lots of consequences, so there's a lot to talk about it. Listen, when I'm here in the valley where these fields are located, I often get headaches and I feel under lots of stress. Sometimes I travel to North Dakota because one of my sons lives there. And over there, I don't feel the same way. There's farms over there, cornfields, but they're not close to where he lives. And they also use chemicals, but North Dakota is much smaller compared to California. Here in California, farming is a produce industry and fruits industry. So, as I said earlier, it supplies internal and external market demands. Farmers are not concerned about your health. To them, it's all about business. It's about money and about supplying to their markets. Now, also, because we have very low income, we cannot access organic foods, nor organic or natural foods with lower chemical contents. And why is that? This is because we do not have the means to access them and they're hard to get. And yes, I also hear about the number of kids in our schools with different disabilities in our community because it's surrounded by these fields. And that concerns me a lot. Therefore, I am involved with this organization, and I have been for almost 3 years now, ever since I met Sarai, and I was when I was taking those health classes facilitated by the Department of Health. And I like how she explained to me how chemicals are used in farming. And for example, how corn contains lots of harmful chemicals that affect our digestive system. My digestive system was also affected. There's so much to talk about, and linked to all of these is linked with pesticides. People ask me, how do I know this is all related? And I share with them that when I came from Mexico, from also a farming area, chemicals were rarely used and I was healthy. And here's where it started, like gaining weight, Hector, started getting sick, gaining weight. And at some point, I weighed 214 pounds, and it was all related to the chemicals used in the fields, those beautiful fields that I admired when I first got here to Greenfield, and was so glad to be. Thank you. Thank you, Rufina, for sharing your testimony and your story. You touched on few relevant points, and now let's keep going with Mariela and then with others who might still here with us. Okay, to be honest, I am quite young and I have not been impacted by this issue directly yet, and it is not impacting my health. However, for me, it is enough to hear all of this experience and others, and those that I have heard through my internship with SAS, for me to keep on fighting and keep advocating for others. I think that's all I have to share, Hector. This is all I can say. Thank you, Mariela. Now let's move on to Liliana. Sure, Hector. We all have shared experiences, and sharing our stories is very important, and even more so to share them in community, just like those of pregnant women, for instance, in regard to, well, more than anything else, they have to work even when those chemicals were just sprayed. They have to work anyway. We have seen death, cancer, eye infections, different kinds of deformities, disabilities in children. And just like I shared before, my own experience, like the ones with my own kids. So three of them have two different issues. Well, two disabilities, and it is very sad. And well, what can we do? Other than keep on working and helping our communities, and like what you do and how you protect residents with the stories we all shared, an invitation to take action and all. And this is what motivates me to stay involved and keep on working together. So yes, and thank you. Thank you, Liliana. Now let's keep on going and move to Maria Isabel. Hector, my apologies, but I got a bit confused with the question. Are we on question number 2, right? Yes, this is more like, well, what is your experience on pesticides exposure at our communities, and specifically here in the southern side of the county, since I'm aware some of you are in that area. And if you're not, please simply share with us what your experience has been and what you have heard from communities in your role as a community leader and also as an active member of different groups and organizations also. Okay, well, yes, as I was saying, two of my kids have issues, and also I have witnessed the effects in my community, which is exactly what you were saying at the beginning. There is a reason why predominantly farmer workers and their children are the ones suffering the most of these issues. And even with that, authorities are in denial. They do not want to hear it and they don't want to see it. So, is this a matter of convenience? Here, I have come to realize of the severity of this problem and how many other issues are linked to it. Farming workers are the ones who are suffering, but here we stand on this fight together, fighting for a change, and we won't step down. Um, we won't step down to please the interests of unscrupulous people, right? And we will keep on going. Thank you. Well said, Isabel. So now we move to Carlos. Hector, I worked for 20 years at the same company, a great vineyard fields, and the best wines of California were produced there. One of the issues I faced as I started from the very bottom was that I used to use the equipment and used to trim weeds out of the furrows. And when it came to having to shake in the plants, some of the residual matter will fall over you. So that affected me. That will affect your eyes and hands more than anything else. And then as a tractor driver, I started spraying, but I will wear my own clothes. They were my work clothes. And I didn't know, and I was not supplied with gloves, nor a mask, nor an overall. I got nothing. And I did it. And why did I do it? I did it because I wanted to work. Over time, I got to meet people who were getting sick, people who were close to exposed to those chemicals. And then, animals died, especially birds, when the strongest pesticides were applied. A pesticide called fudodan back then, and that is now used, similar to what is being used on strawberry fields to control pests and who knows what else. But I witnessed something that really bothered me, and that is an allergy that even now I must take pills for it and use a nasal inhaler to control it. I also met people who asked me for advice on how to get help caring for their hyperactive children and children with emotional disorders and Down syndrome. And that was when I was part of a local parent committee at Head Start, which is a program for kids ages 0 to 5, and where these issues were very common. And right there, I started learning about that. Also, I started to get involved with other organizations like the United Farm Workers who work directly with farm workers, and I started to learn about issues that were impacting their children and those parents who had limited access to educational services. I also learned about the Chamacos program. I was a volunteer with them as well, and I learned about the research and some of those findings. And their findings were not scientific findings, but based on the research they made. One of the findings was that at an individual and personal level, pesticides used on the fields were affecting workers. I also received training as a peer parent mentor for parents of children ages 0 to 5. They explained how different levels of harm were caused by fertilizers and other chemicals used in fields, and how those were in direct relation to children's illnesses and the ongoing issues parents were facing. So I kept on going and learning about this issue and all of the variety of cancers and what over time I have witnessed. A few years back, a friend of mine passed away due to cancer, prostate cancer. He was never told where the cancer started, but he used to work in a tractor spraying pesticides. This tractor was wide open, and I think that was what caused his cancer. The more you think and analyze this sort of situation, the more you realize how it is harming us. Thank God, all of my kids, I have 7 children, and none of them were highly impacted. A few of them are hyperactive, my sons. They have some level of hyperactivity, and their mom used to work in the grape fields for several years, including when she was pregnant. And so she was exposed. I have also met people here in my community and at a county and state level who share similar stories. So there is a direct relationship to pesticides and chemicals used in the fields. I also would like to mention, as an additional comment, that I have met people in Fresno County, Madera County, and San Joaquin County who, in addition to the exposure to pesticides, they have been affected by high levels of pollution produced by traffic. And that adds more layers to this issue. I would like to prevent for my boys and my girls and from having any chances to get any kind of cancer. I wouldn't want my family to go through all of that, and actually no one else in my community. And that's all. Thank you. Thank you, Carlos, and to all of you who share all of these experiences, right? Those are samples of what you and your communities have endured as individuals and communities. And as we're reaching our end today, since we do not have much time left, I wanted to answer, pose the last question. Actually, two in one, since we do not have much time left. It is a call to action. And what could you say to our audience and add to this conversation for people to take action towards changing the realities we and our communities face? And how could they become allies to this cause? The second part of my question, because, as I said, we do not have a lot of time left, is how could we get our youth involved? And also the general public, right? Because this is an issue that we all eat, right? We all consume the produce grown in this area, and communities around these fields and the farm workers and their families are the most impacted by it. So I would like for you to take a minute and quickly answer that. And so we can go ahead and get started with Juan. Yeah, well, I think that it is similar to what we're doing here, right? Making videos and sharing our stories, right? And for people to hear how dangerous chemical exposure really is and that to get involved, right? Well, we ourselves could invite more people to join us, ask our kids to get involved and keep on creating awareness, raising this awareness, right? It is about their future after all, and the future of our grandchildren, because we're having grandchildren now. And so get them involved and share with them the importance of keeping with this fight. Thanks, Juan. Now we move to Rufina. Yes, listen, Hector, well, How could we get our community involved? As Juan said, making more videos and inviting people to join our meetings. People that we know, people, contacts that we have in our phones, and invite them, make them, aware. And because the easiest way out could be like just let it be and let it go, and as if it didn't matter, but to the mercy of the farmers, trusting that the vegetables we consume from the markets are ready to be consumed. But we need to learn how to clean those vegetables. And as I said, we all need to, consume our vegetables, but people need to learn how to best remove chemical residuals of our fruits and vegetables. For instance, you could wash them with water and vinegar and baking soda, and that helps. Or you could peel them, and yet by doing so, you lose lots of fiber, minerals, and vitamins. But we need overall more education and also access through social media, and invite people to participate in our meetings so they can learn about pesticides and its harmful effects, and how sometimes we ignore what we're serving on our tables and not always process our foods properly. Another important fact is that some of the seeds used to grow our food are already treated with pesticides. So even if you wash them and peel your products, the poison is in it. So, for instance, we could speak with our children, our nieces and nephews, to get our youth involved, Hector. And well, that's all. That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you, Rufina. Now let's move on to Mariela, and please answer. As I said, well, and obviously this conference is at a national level, but there are people here in our audience from different areas of California and the state, but also other states and in the country, who are listening to us. So how could they become allies to our cause? And how could they continue sharing what we're sharing here today and what is affecting our communities, particularly here in Monterrey? Could you tell us a bit about how we all could get our youth and general public involved into these matters? Well, the way I will approach this invitation, I take advantage of spaces like this one and ask people to speak up. If we don't do it ourselves, no one will. I also encourage our youth to participate and speak up, because they're the future, and it's because of them, and also to engage to honor their parents as well, since they have been experienced these are firsthand and have lived in the area and in places where people are affected by those chemicals. Thank you. Thank you, Mariela. Now let's move on to Liliana. Of course, yes. Well, a call to action is to speak up for sure, and to be certain that your voice matters as residents, regardless of your immigration status. Our voice matters, and we have to take action because we are an important force in this country, and we have rights, and we must keep fighting and keep on doing it for the future of our children. And at the same time, I would like to call our youth attention, join us, and do it in order to your parents, because you rely on them. And as parents, we do what's best for our children and their well-being. So I invite you to speak up and keep on working alongside organizations who are there providing us with the education we need, the information and knowledge for us to share also with other community members. Thank you. We'll move on then now to Maria Isabel. Yes, Hector. Well, I would like to call call to action. My call to action is addressed to these industry authorities like farming commissioners, also to analyze all of this, to gather all of the cases and experiences of those who have been directly affected and those of us who are involved with organizations. We're not here simply because we like it. We have been impacted directly. To farmers, for them to please be conscious of their practices. This is not a matter of profit over people or filling up their pockets, and that I hope that they never have to face the day when a loved one is impacted by all this. I will ask for them not to wait for them to have to face something like this to do something about it. I will ask them to please, with all honesty, to recognize the harm that they're, and recognize that we're right, by recognizing that thousands, millions of children who have learning disabilities as a direct consequence. These children have been greatly impacted for life. They suffer because of their learning disabilities. They're victims of bullying at their schools. There's suicides. All of these are consequences of the situation we're facing and talking about here today. So that is all, and that is my call to action to them, to be honest and to think this through, to think about what they're doing and how they're affecting everyone, not only on a local scale, but on a larger scale as a humanity. This is not just about us or a few cases, isolated cases, as you said. It is not one out of a million or one every 1,000. And to our youth, I will remind them that this is the only world they have, and this is about their future and the future of their planet. Maybe us as adults, we don't have much time left here, but they do, and it's about their future, and they have the decision power to make better choices, and whether that is to have a healthy life or if they want to live surrounded by pesticides, if they want their children to be limbless or for them to have learning disabilities. This is just getting worse. It's not getting any better. So from here on, I mean, what's coming? What's going to be like for your children or grandchildren? I will say that we need to take a closer look at all of these cases and the issues those kids are facing. And we as adults, I mean, this is also impacting us, right? It is also impacting our health, of course. More than anything else, I will remind our youth that they have the power to act and change these for good. And well, that is all. Thank you. Thank you. Now let's go ahead and move to Carlos. Hector, I have been working this for a while, wanting to make a change, and this is a pressing need here in the area. But first and foremost, we need education. I will suggest increasing awareness, teaching parents whether their kids have issues or not, about the role they play on this issue that is affecting our farming badly. More importantly, teach them about the risks, those invisible risks, pesticides and chemicals and all of what goes into our fields. And by doing so, we could find supporters, people who will follow us. And for local farming commissioners and county staff to pay closer attention and support gain more support and tend to our requests. As of now, I think their support has been partial, and they need to implement more regulations on the use of sprayable pesticides in our fields, because there are other options. Following that, I would like for us, Hector, to have a school program in which our youth can be part of annual meetings or even parent meetings, so we can have an opportunity to increase awareness, to inform, to share, to educate on the risks our farmers are exposed to. This is not simply about generating an income. This is also about preventing future issues that impact our children. Um, why do I think this could be helpful? Well, I think we will then have an informed community, a community at ease, an educated youth focused on creating brighter futures instead of self-harm. As Ms. Marisabel shared earlier, there's high levels of suicides and school desertion. Right when our kids are reaching high school, they figure out it's too difficult for them, so they feel isolated and drop out of school. They're called dropouts. There's definitely lots of work left to do here. And another thing we could do is participating at annual events like this year. Well, I hope this year we get to celebrate Cesar Chavez Day to make emphasis on this. Here at also at the during the Broccoli Fest and the Farm Workers Fest, we have to engage and raise awareness so people can support us and for them to be aware. Many people don't even know what kind of risks they're exposing themselves to when working in the fields. They might think they're simply working, but they don't. They don't realize that they're taking the issue home in their shoes, their clothes, their hands. They're bringing it to their homes without knowing. Maybe out of each 1,000 people, 70 people might know about it, but most of people don't. So it could be a good idea to get together in sync. For those of us engaging with SAS, to join our voices as one group, differences aside, and take this opportunity as an opportunity to improve our community here in Greenfield. And why not? Bring it to a county level, at a state level, and raise awareness and invite youth. They might not even be aware of their own potential. And we can be the makers for younger generations to find their own paths and to keep on doing positive, long-lasting work for themselves and future generations. I also think it's important to let them know that there's people out there doing this work. And we're speaking to field supervisors, senators, government representatives, farming commissioners, city staff, everyone who is currently in a position of power, with the goal of seeking a better environment, a better lifestyle for all of us, and for them to be, part of this shift. That's all. Thank you, Carlos. So, well, as we heard from our panelists today and throughout this conversation and the realities and about our region, unfortunately, we're still living in deplorable conditions, even though not too far from here, just west of Monterey Peninsula, in the Carmen Valley, Pacific Grove, and Broomdale areas. Those areas of the county where others are behind or on a farming bubble. So I just wanted to thank you all, and thank you all very much for investing your time this way and for being here with us, sharing your experiences. We know you're organizers who are building power from within our communities and are fighting for equity and inclusion, while standing proudly for residents' rights, including those of our farm workers and as well their families, right? So, well, thank you all for participating in this call, and well, let's hope for our listeners to support us and become our allies. And this is not exclusive to Monterey County and South areas, but also throughout the state and our entire nation, a nation that we all belong to, right? So again, thanks for your time, and that's all. Hector, I have one last comment. It was briefly mentioned, and we have to struggle for council members to support us. to really support us. And well, I think that just to wrap up on election season, whether they're local, state, or any other election, we must find out and ask those candidates, what is it that they're willing to do? We must choose our leaders wisely and make sure that they're in support. Some of us struggle even to get a hold of elected officials over the phone. Of course, Juan. Well, thank you for that last comment. And yes, thank you all for your time and for allocating your afternoon today to be here on this call. Hector, allow me to add, Ms. Maria Isabel has good plans for the city. We would like your support. Juan Manuel, we must support Ms. Maria Isabel. She might surprise us all, and we need to support, new faces and good-hearted people. She has a very kind heart towards working with our community. Thank you. Thank you for being so flattering. Thank you.